At 62, Pastor Gino Jennings has finally revealed what millions have been whispering about: the real reason Bishop T.D. Jakes stepped down from the Potter's house. This isn't just a peaceful retirement. Jennings calls it a cover-up, a calculated move hiding deeper truths the church doesn't want exposed. Add in Leandria Johnson's explosive reaction, and you've got a storm shaking the core of modern ministry. What really forced Jakes to walk away? The truth is more shocking than you think. It began on a quiet Sunday. T.D. Jakes, the man who turned a humble congregation into a global ministry empire, announced his decision to step down. After decades of sermons, best-selling books, and international conferences, he was walking away from the pulpit that had made him a household name. On the surface, the message was simple. It was time to focus on future endeavors and let the next generation lead. But the timing raised eyebrows. Questions began swirling. Why now? Was it just about a graceful exit, or was there pressure behind the scenes? Some began to suspect internal tensions, possible controversies, or even strategic damage control. The silence following the announcement said more than the words themselves. But what truly sent the Christian world reeling was the reaction from someone who didn't mince words. Grammy-winning gospel artist Leandria Johnson. Known for her soul-stirring voice and even more powerful honesty, Leandria didn't offer the expected kind words or gentle praise. Instead, she offered a sigh of relief. To her, this wasn't a tragedy. It was a long-awaited change. In interviews and online posts, she expressed what many younger believers had long felt: that the church had become dominated by celebrity pastors who seemed more interested in preserving their brands than ministering to broken hearts. She didn't stop there. Leandria directly called out the culture of empire building within the church. She challenged leaders who had accumulated power and status while distancing themselves from the needs of their people. For her, T.D. Jakes stepping down wasn't just a resignation. It was an opportunity to reimagine church leadership for a generation craving authenticity. While her words resonated with many, others saw them as a veiled critique, perhaps even a personal attack, on a man who had shaped millions of lives. But Leandria wasn't alone in her perspective. The call for change was gaining traction. And then, Pastor Gino Jennings took the microphone, and he did not hold back. In a moment that shocked congregations across the country, Jennings launched a blistering rebuke of T.D. Jakes. In front of his congregation and a massive online audience, Jennings accused Jakes of running from confrontation, dodging the truth, and refusing to engage in meaningful theological dialogue. For years, Jennings had challenged Jakes on doctrinal differences, especially around their opposing interpretations of God's nature. Jennings is a staunch oneness believer committed to apostolic teachings. And while Jakes has also embraced oneness theology in the past, Jennings claimed Jakes had watered it down to fit a more mainstream, inclusive gospel. When Jennings invited Jakes to a face-to-face discussion about these views, the silence was deafening. Jakes never responded. Jennings saw that as a sign of fear, not humility, and from his pulpit, he let the world know. "You don't run from the truth," Jennings said. "If you stand for something, stand up and defend it." For Jennings and his supporters, this was about more than doctrine. It was about integrity. In their view, Jakes had spent years building a media empire. But when challenged to defend his message, he chose silence over confrontation. To them, that was unacceptable. But behind this very public dispute, another player was pulling strings in the shadows. As this drama played out across churches and social media, investigative journalists uncovered something startling. A well-connected media mogul and pastor named Michael Thompson had allegedly been stoking the flames from behind the scenes. With deep ties to both Jakes and Jennings, Thompson reportedly saw the feud as a ratings goldmine, a chance to drive massive online traffic, spark debate, and extend his own influence across the religious media landscape. According to insiders, Thompson had quietly encouraged both pastors to keep the conflict alive, not for theological clarity, but for attention. The more public the drama, the greater the viewership. It wasn't ministry, it was marketing. This revelation stunned churchgoers across the country. Had this entire conflict been manipulated for profit? Were Jakes and Jennings not just pastors, but pawns in a larger game of media control? Just as the scandal reached its boiling point, another twist emerged. T.D. Jakes finally responded, but not in the way people expected. Instead of accepting Jennings's challenge or addressing the controversy directly, Jakes took a more subtle approach. Through a carefully worded sermon, he spoke about avoiding unnecessary conflict, rejecting public spectacle, and focusing on love over division. He never mentioned Jennings by name. To his followers, it was a master class in dignity, a refusal to lower himself to a public argument. But to Jennings's supporters, it was proof that Jakes had something to hide. And then came a voice that cut through the noise like a thunderclap. Dr. Marcus Gray, a respected theologian who had worked closely with both Jakes and Jennings, stepped into the conversation. His verdict? Both men were wrong. What the world was witnessing wasn't a theological dispute. It was a battle of egos. Dr. Gray didn't hold back. He accused the pastors of turning their ministries into platforms for power, saying, "We're watching a clash of brands, not a battle for biblical truth." He went further, saying both men owed their followers an apology for putting their personal pride ahead of the gospel. His words hit hard. Many followers who had taken sides suddenly began to reflect. Was this really about defending doctrine? Or was it about preserving influence? Amid all this drama, let's not forget what started it: the passing of the torch at the Potter's house. In Jakes' absence, leadership will now fall to two very different figures: his daughter, Cora Jakes Coleman, and longtime associate Bishop Jonathan Miller. Together, they represent two possible futures. Cora is known for her emotionally rich messages, her focus on healing, mental health, and empowering women. She speaks directly to younger believers, those who have often felt left out of traditional church spaces. But critics question whether she has the experience and authority to fill the enormous shoes her father left behind. Bishop Miller, by contrast, is seen as a steady, experienced leader. He has served within the Potter's House network for years and brings a more traditional approach. But is tradition enough to keep the church relevant in a rapidly changing world? Together, they face a monumental task. Not only must they prove they can lead, but they must also convince a deeply loyal congregation to embrace change. And that congregation is watching closely. To them, T.D. Jakes wasn't just a preacher, he was a lifeline, a father figure, a voice of hope during personal storms. His departure leaves more than a leadership gap. It leaves an emotional void. Can Cora and Bishop Miller bridge that gap? Or will this be the beginning of a painful decline? The answer may not come quickly. Like many megachurches across America, the Potter's House now stands at a crossroads. In a world increasingly skeptical of religious institutions, this transition could either revive the church's mission or expose its deepest flaws. One thing is certain: this isn't just a story about T.D. Jakes. It's a story about power, authenticity, and the future of the church in an age of spectacle. And as this new chapter begins, the world will be watching, not just to see who holds the microphone next, but whether they'll speak truth from the heart or just play the part. If this story shook you like it did us, don't just scroll past. Hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more deep dives into the truth behind today's most powerful pulpits. Thanks for watching.